A special meeting of the Clark County Board of Education, purpose for which is to discuss the working budget. I'd like to have everybody stand and observe a moment of silence.
We could remember the Pace family name.
I pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item of business is adoption of the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Peridot,
I'll second that motion.
second by Mr. Wilson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Public comments? None. And next up is item number 2, consider adoption of the 2016-2017 working budget. Dr. Arvin is here for Dr. Wagner tonight.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I think we have a PowerPoint.
It's in there. Hey, looking like it.
Okay, we'll do it the old-fashioned way.
Is that not the one that you need there?
No, it looks like this.
I think it's the same thing, all the pages.
I just wanted us to all be on the same page.
Yeah. Let's see if we can get that.
We're getting it. There it is. Thank you. That makes it easy.
Okay. Basically, it's good news in this budget report, and I told Mr. Christie last week it's the best that we've done in a number of years, so you can really feel good about this budget. We're going to do some highlights, and then I encourage interaction, so at any point that you have questions, just jump right in and let me know. First thing is to look at revenue all funds, table A that's on the screen right now. The general fund on the top line, $50,138,000, an increase of 2.2% over a year ago, or an increase of slightly over $1 million. We'll look at the general fund in more detail on the next slide. Special revenue funds on the next line. At this point, when you make the comparison of last year, you received $6,047,000. The budget at this point in time shows $5,400,673. The reason it's down that much is there's still some grant programs that have not been confirmed. So as they are confirmed, you can add those to the budget as amendments later on. And that's basically the practice that we've always followed until we have the confirmation of the grant. We recommend that you don't budget it. So that's the reason for that being down. Capital outlay fund is down by about $9,000. And that's because your ADA is down. Capital outlay is paid at $100 per pupil. Your building fund is up by $111,000, 3.6 to almost 3.8 million, a 3% increase. And that's primarily due to two things. One, the growth in assessment, and the other piece is the equalization feature of SEEK on your 2 nickels for the building tax. Food service fund. It's interesting, when we reviewed this, if you go back to 2014-15, in that particular year you received 4.7 million. Last year you received 4.590 or almost 4.6 million. This year you're budgeted to receive only 4,237,000. So right now you're looking at kind of a downward trend in your food service fund. Any questions about the summary?
The downward trend in the food service fund, what would that,
I've got a question
Reason
mark
for
for
that.
that, and I have not got to talk to Becky to see. I don't know if CDP has changed that any. Of course, we're serving more meals than we've ever served right now.
I actually spoke with Becky earlier today about it, just to clarify, and she said the biggest thing is participation is down. Students are choosing to do the à la carte versus going through the line and getting a meal, and we don't get reimbursed for that. So that's a big chunk of reimbursable money from the federal level that they're not getting on meals because, and then she said also with just the cost of food being up, that they have to do the whole grains now and the fruits, they have to provide that, whether they eat it or not, they've got to take it when they go through the line. So there's the extra cost of that, so her carry forward every year is going down just because of her increased expense costs.
I have met with principals. We're working on the lunch, the breakfast participation. We're monitoring those numbers. Those numbers are continuing to grow as we get into the school year. But we're working with some of the schools, come up with some plans to ensure that every child goes through the line so that they have the opportunity to take food. That wasn't happening. And now we're working where we get every kid, as they come in, they go through the food service line, and we're starting to see those numbers come up some. So we'll
With that
continue to monitor that.
New universal feeding we got for grades all the way up to 6th grade, I guess.
Yes.
Can we, maybe have Becky put something together for the next board meeting or something, just to kind of see how
Well,
that's
that would be
increased?
Christie that would do that, Christie Bush.
Okay,
who's
Christie,
the one that's over the
okay.
CEP. Becky can't do the CEP with the
Okay.
federal lunch program. It has to be
Okay.
another person.
Okay.
Becky can't do it, so that Christie's over the CEP.
Okay.
So we'll have that.
Just some numbers.
Yeah.
is that something we need to think about, as we go through this? Of course, I know we want to try to get district-wide, get everybody free,
Yeah.
but
Well,
But do we need to look at maybe bumping the lunches a quarter or something like that? I know that that's not a popular thing, but we definitely don't, I know your cafeteria struggles sometimes, but are we hurting ourselves with the à la cartes instead of the other things? Or are some more innovative things out there that we need to do to bump it up?
Yeah, it's a concern because any deficit we run in the food service fund comes out of general fund.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this is $350,000 we're not going to be doing something else with.
I don't know, of course, I know the government puts a lot of stipulations on you,
Right.
but I don't know, is that something that we might need to do a little study on and maybe come up with some ideas? I'm not sure we have to cure the whole problem, but we definitely don't want it to be a big heat on our budget.
So is the amount of food being purchased for regular lunches being modified because of the increase in the à la carte? How does that transfer into,
That's a Becky question.
You know.
That part would be a Becky question, not Christie. I'm not sure on that. What we're working on doing is at the next one, have both of them. Between the two, we can do a report on both.
Ideally, you'd like for your food service program to make enough money to break even,
That's right.
Yeah.
so you don't have to subsidize it.
That's right.
Okay, if you go to table B, we look at a little bit more detail of the general fund revenue. And there you can see the growth on the first line in your beginning balance, which means that you've not been spending as much as you take in, which is a good thing. For this year's working budget, $14,077,000 beginning balance. That's a change of a little over $2 million or 17%. Local general fund revenue was last year 17,662. This year projected to be 17,656, or just about zero difference there. That's your property tax revenues. State revenue, down 330,000, and that's because your ADA is down. So the SEEK fund program's funded based on the ADA. Federal revenue, there's a small amount that passes through the general fund, and you can see that's budgeted conservatively at 150,000, whereas a year ago you got 275,000. So that right now is showing 125,000 less than the previous year. Other receipts, last year you had 708,000 of other receipts. At this point, the budget picture looks like there would be about 177,000 this year. And that's not unusual to see this. You probably had some activity of reimbursements in this line item that you don't know, they're unexpected reimbursements. So that number could grow or it could go down. So I think it's a solid number. Any question about general fund revenue?
That statement that says overall the general fund revenue is projected to increase $5,548,222 or 12.4%. From what? What's it increasing from? Because these numbers up here do not yield that amount.
Well, if you look on the total line, 50,138,000. And I'm not sure I understand what you're asking me.
That last sentence in the first paragraph below that table,
Let me change documents.
under table B. Where it says the general fund revenue is projected to increase.
That goes with table C.
Okay, but what's it increasing from?
All right, if you go down to table C, it's a comparison
So
between,
just the difference between tentative budget and working budget?
that's right,
Okay, I was trying to make it work from,
from table B,
yes,
Yeah.
and none of those numbers matched.
right.
And this is not for you, but I probably need, but Paul, one of the things, since our attendance did go down, when we looked at that last
Our
one.
attendance only went down 0.1%. It's the loss of numbers of students is what cost us in the ADA. We lost
Is
the
that
number
what
of students.
cost us?
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
got us. The attendance was virtually the same as it was the preceding year.
Okay.
It was actually less
Yes,
than
that's
what.
students leaving the
Yeah.
district is the decrease in ADA.
Homeschooled, for any other reasons.
Is that basically was a homeschool maybe and?
Moving out of community.
Moving out of the community and homeschool between the two of those, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay.
Okay, now let's go to table C, where you see a comparison between the general budget revenue and what was in the tentative budget that you approved in May. And these are the numbers you were trying to get a balance on, Judy.
Yes, yes.
The beginning balance, the first line item there, at the time we did the tentative budget, we were looking at 9.6. Now with known data, it's 14,077,000, or an increase of almost 46%. And that's attributable to the over budgeting a year ago in salaries. I think you all have had some discussion about that and understand what happened there.
It still doesn't seem like that would cause that much of an increase. Were there other things besides the over budgeting of salaries?
I'm sorry,
Were there other
other
things,
factors?
yeah, other factors besides the over budgeting of salaries?
Well, there could be some other factors. I don't think all of that was attributable to the over budgeting of salaries.
What was the other?
The tax, the 4%.
The 4%'s already been added on for this year?
Mhm.
Okay,
It's in
okay.
here.
Yeah, that's where the
Yeah.
4% change from working attendant budget comes from.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Because the overall assessed value in the county is about the same.
Yeah.
It just seems,
Okay. In state revenue, we were looking for 17,910,000 in May. Now we've scaled that back some to, or not scaled back, but scaled it up to 18,077,000, or an increase of almost 1%. Federal revenue, 150,000, was 57,000 in May, 92,000 up on that. Bottom line on total of general fund increased by 5.5 million, with most of that being due to the beginning balance.
Now, that federal money, you said in there, it went from 57 to 150,000. What would be the reason why it went up that much? Is there a reason for that?
That's me.
'Cause
That
that's a
is
pretty
the
good jump.
Medicaid- That's the Medicaid money, and I took an average.
That you're billing through there?
Yes, so
Okay,
that's
I got you.
the Medicaid in the last 2 years, which on the previous, on, which chart was it? On table B, you'll see the federal general fund revenue. 14-15, we brought in 164, and 15-16, we brought in 275, so I did an average
Okay, I
of
got
that,
you.
and
I
just
see what you
budgeted
got.
150 versus the 57, because we expect to bring in that or more this year, with the
Gotcha.
direct billing
I'm
and
following.
reimbursable.
Okay,
And I think that was an appropriate adjustment based on the history.
okay.
Ready to go to table D? Here we're looking at the working budget compared to actual revenue of the prior year. Local tax revenue would be up almost 1.2 million, or 7.5% increase. Penalties on omitted taxes, not much change there, because that's something you look at historically. And traditionally, you try not to over budget for that. It changes from year to year. You can see, for example, 2 years ago, only 45,000 was received, and last year, almost 200,000, so it jumps around. Interest, I can remember the days when I would do school budgets and look at this interest line and see in excess of $1 million coming into a school district your size. And you all shaking your heads, you remember that too.
Remember, my student loans were a lot higher too.
Other local revenue, again, this is some of the flow of funds with some of the special projects that you were funding out of the general fund. So right now, that drops off to 291,000. And that would be subject to any special projects that you would fund out of the general fund that could increase that. If you go on to table E, you get a quick comparison there of the general fund expenses, salaries, personnel services, up $410,000, 1.6% increase. But the 25,386,000 that's budgeted does include sufficient appropriation for you to do a 2% certified, and a 3% classified, should you choose to do that. So that money is plugged in at this point.
Now, what was it? Go back over that again.
There's sufficient money in the 25 million that's budgeted in this line item to do a 2% to the certified salary schedules and 3% to the classified salary
In other
schedules.
words, it's already figured into that.
Sorry.
The employee
Which
benefits,
is subject to your change. If you go backwards, it would take out of that money that you would take off, that would then go into the general fund or to the contingency, and anything that you did above either one of those numbers would add to that number, come out of the contingency and go to that line item.
that was one of my questions too, is how could you have a 2% built in and only be going up 1.4, but that's the reason.
Okay.
I won't read line by line the rest of these. You can see the changes. The biggest change being in other items. At this point, you had some reimbursement money coming into the general fund or going out of the general fund a year ago. Right now, you're showing no activity in the other items. And that would be subject to actions that you might take later on in the year, should something be funded out of the general fund that's not budgeted at this point.
That was, that number that you see there, that pretty much, that was the preschool property.
Just a question here on, in 0200 employee benefits. How do you, and maybe Scarlett can help with that too, I don't know. How do you, is there a formula that you use to be able to come up with how much money? I mean, just going back historically, you know, the last 3 years, you know, we increased, our benefits totals increased almost $300,000 2 years ago, $127,000 last year, and looks like we're looking at $145 this year. I mean, that's over $500,000 here in the last 3 years. How do we, I mean, is there something that we come up with that says what our benefits are? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
you'll get the amounts of what each of the,
it just increased. I mean, it looks like to me that it increased $284,000 in the 14-15, and then it $127,000 it increased last year, and then we're looking at
Just
And then-
increases, it's just more expensive.
It
It's
just-
it's just more, I'd say, you probably see it.
Oh, yeah.
Every company can increase the cost of health
Right.
insurance.
So you just, I mean, we just put a
I don't
flat
know.
figure out there, just, you know, got this many employees, so we
It always
multiply it by
depends on
this.
What
and-
policy that they choose to take, and there's less expensive and more expensive. If we have our federal grant people, we have to reimburse the state for their
Right,
portion of the health
right.
insurance. That's about $30,000 a
Right.
month
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah,
It just
we're real limited
depends.
on who we put in those positions.
And another
On the
question
certified
here.
side of things, there was an action 2 or 3 years ago to balance the teacher retirement system on the health insurance
Right.
side. And that was, stair stepped up. It started off like 1%, then went to 1.5 and 2 and 2.5. And I think last year, this may be the last year of that stepping increase. But that's contributed to it, and the other thing is the classified rate just keeps going up.
Okay. The other question, and I'm sure you probably, I don't know if Mr. Christie can answer, and Alicia, I don't know if she's been here long enough, but on this that we received last year, it shows employee benefits, the actual cost for 14-15 being $26.46, $526, and the one we got this year shows it at $26.06, $740. So that's a little bit, we spent less than what it was. I mean, I thought these figures came back were audited figures, but perhaps they changed throughout. And then also the only other one changed was on property.
Actual benefits could be because of people that would leave or come in.
But would that affect,
That
I
would
mean,
affect what
you know,
that would affect what your actual expense
I
was,
mean,
what you actually
this is
paid.
based on an audited account when we get it, right? And what we got last September, just like we're looking at these right here for our actual expense for 15, 16.
This is
And we're
unaudited
believing
right
these
now.
Unaudited, really.
This is unaudited, so when you received this last year, it would have been unaudited.
unaudited, okay, so
Yeah.
then it changed at
Yes.
that point there,
Yeah.
okay. All right,
So that's probably accounting for the difference.
Okay,
of
those
what-
were the two
I haven't
different
seen last
ones.
year's to see that difference, but, that would be, because right now, when you received it last year, 14-15 would have been unaudited.
now that would have been a difference of, you know, 21,487, I don't know, maybe somewhere in a board meeting I missed, I don't know, that should have been added back into contingency, I'm assuming, somewhere in there. I mean, I would think that when that auditor report comes in, that should come before the board, that we've added that much money back into there. I don't, I mean, if I missed it, I missed it. I don't remember that
I
though.
have to
But-
check, we'll have to look at
I
that.
have to look at the audit report from last
Okay.
See where it was added back in. I
Okay.
think that would end up being part of that additional carryover that you're seeing,
Okay.
where it would be.
The last number that I wanted to comment on Table E is that the contingency, you have a contingency in this budget at this point in time of $14,870,000, which is a good thing because you could make some choices of things that you may have been considering. So it's important for
What
you
is
to
that
know that
percentage?
that much money is available in the contingency.
What's that about? Is that 25%?
25%.
Okay.
The statutory requirement is 2.5%. So,
The discussion with Dr. Bob last time, Dr. Bob Wagner last time, he was here
Yeah.
about what is an appropriate contingency to maintain.
well, the caution that I give when districts build up a good contingency, it's best to do one-time expenses. If you do recurring expenses, you can wipe that out in a few years. So as you look at what you might want to do with some of that contingency money, I encourage you to look at one-time expenses and select the most powerful way to improve student learning with that. The other thing that I would comment on that's not in the document, the capital funds, you have sufficient money in your capital funds to pay your debt service. That's the first thing they look at the state when they review a budget, is have you budgeted enough money to pay your debt? And you have met that standard. So I'll stop at this point and see if there's any other questions I cannot answer.
I want to point out one thing, look, when you look at, again, I want you to notice the total salaries and benefits as percent of the general fund, we're still under 80% in actual expenses again last year. I know as we went through the year, that number was being projected at being 82, 83, and there was a lot of concern and caution there, but as I told you then, at the end of the year, when it's all said and done, the number it drops back down. That's when we clean up all the subs, all that kind of thing. You're projected at, this working budget is at 80.12. I will tell you that without doing anything, unless we hire additional people, if something gets approved through you all to do some additional things, that number will come back less than 80% again this next year.
We budget pretty conservatively, it looks like to me, for teachers. When we gave a 2% raise last year, our salaries went up, I think, $321,000. We've allowed for $410,000 this year, so I think we're
Being conservative
good.
again, but then again,
And I
there's
think
been
that's-
increases
yeah,
in,
oh, yeah,
there's
oh, yeah.
been increases in the
That's why I said I
benefits.
think you're on target with that.
Well, and you see that in table H. That table is comparing the expense of percent of revenue to your expense. And historically, when you track across there, you can see in the past, 6 years, you've always stayed within your budget. You've never exceeded your budget. And that's good, solid administration.
Going back to Table G, just a couple of questions, and there are probably more for Mr. Christie or whatever's impact. In 0700 in property, in our tentative budget, we budgeted $110,000. In our working budget, we budgeted $1,041,000. What was that's a pretty substantial increase of what we thought we might need, 844%.
A big chunk of that is the money that was given to Mike Napier for the E-rate, for the technology plan that we just asked the capital
Okay.
funds. We took
That
that
was
out
over
of
500.
contingency and gave him that money because he had to spend it by a certain date in order to use.
So
his
that's in
E-rate
this
money.
account here.
So that's
Okay.
why from tentative to working, it's gone up. over
That was 8 something, wasn't it? It was a total of 8.
809.
It was a little
Will that be
over 8.
reimbursed from capital outlay fund or not?
Yep. That's what we just requested this past spring.
Right.
Yes, so that'll be reimbursed from the capital.
But if you remember when you did that project, we talked about that, we did it out of the general fund at that time, and that's where it was budgeted to come out of. However, as we came through this, I've asked to switch it back over to the capital outlay. put this back into the general fund.
And also, in 0600 in supplies, this is another one that really gets me. And I know we've cut down, but then again, I think we left over 300 and some thousand dollars in there. I don't know that we over budgeted, and I guess this is what concerned me, that we over budgeted 300 and some thousand dollars, or that people weren't aware that there was $300,000 in the account to spend. I just, that's something we talk all the time about,
If they weren't, there's at least two here tonight that's
well,
aware of it now.
that's what I
so-
say. Well, the teachers, we talk about all the time, our teachers leaving our district to go
Yeah,
somewhere
yeah.
else for higher pay or whatever. The first thing that happens to a teacher is job dissatisfaction before they start looking. And so if you give teachers what they need to teach, and they know that it's there, principals know it's there, just making sure we have a system to do that. And I know we're spending less this year, or budgeting less this year than what we did last year. I know we went over, we had that much money in surplus in there. But I just want to make sure the transparency's there from teacher to principal, principal to directors, directors to superintendents, that if, we need supplies, and I'm sure everybody on this board's probably heard a teacher say, well, I couldn't get this, they said we didn't have the money, or principals have heard it, or teachers have heard it.
Parents have heard it.
But, and that's not a free-for-all, but I think we've got to have a lot more transparency, when we all get the PTOs, what they're doing to try to raise money at schools or whatever, and sometimes with just a 3-2 vote right here, we can take care of every PTO in the district right there with what we have in contingency. So we need to really make sure that we're on top of that, and it does concern me that we're going down a little bit in supplies right now, because I'm not confident that we knew we had that money there in the past.
How are supplies, how do teachers know how much supply money they get? How is that
That's
communicated
a building,
from?
that's from the principals to the,
Usually that's budgeted, I'll answer that. Usually that's budgeted to Judy through the departments, through the department head. You take that, and that comes from your
Right.
Section 6 money from your site-based councils, which go to your
Right.
principals, and then they divide that up based on.
So, but is that a standard procedure within our schools, or do principals do it differently?
I would say they're all done differently. I
Probably
can speak
probably
how
a
the
little
high
bit, yeah,
school,
probably.
the way we did it, obviously, with some departments, I know
And
some
others
people
about
try to
grade.
do, well, everybody gets this, however many kids are in this department or whatever, but that's not a fair way, because science is gonna cost more than
That's right.
something else, and so you have to look at those things. Those are things that site-based and principals do. Now, when it gets to elementary,
They do it more by
I'm
grade.
not sure how they do it,
More by
grade level,
That's right.
with what,
And we
those
did do
teachers-
as you all approved at the last meeting, and I think Alicia today, or yesterday, took care of the,
Today, they received all their money
For
for
their-
this year plus an APEX.
so they've got that back in their accounts now, so.
that should be what, 15,000 or so for schools?
Elementary was about 9, but for the high school, middle school, the others, it was, I don't know, 15, 14, 15, 16. 11 at yours, and it was 15 or 16 at the high school.
Any idea what their copier costs are?
We're
that?
working on the copier costs. We're
That's
trying to,
pretty sad.
well, they've been working with bidding it out. But
Right.
the problem is we've got so many, where it's taking us to get to where we've got everybody on the same brand of copier. We got contracts that still are out 4 and 5 years. So for the buyout, they're wanting to lock us in at the same price. So all we would be getting out of the deal is new copiers,
Right.
no reduction in cost. So we're still negotiating with the copy company. I think there should be a reduction. That was my goal 10 years ago, was to get us on one company so we could bid it at a district level when it was thousands of dollars less. Well, we've got everybody on one copy company now, but to get them all there, they've had to sign at different varying times lease agreements. So some of them are out still 5 years, so the buyout is still pretty high. If we wait another year to do that, it'll get a whole lot less. So we're working on that.
As long as they're running and there's paper.
Well, there's
I mean,
plenty of paper, and they're
it
running.
comes out
Sometimes
an
they're
alert
not
out on
as good as they would like.
School's pretty quick when copier goes down, I can tell you that. That's an alert.
The other thing I would say too with the budget, I think you gotta be careful also on how much money you give them, because some teachers do stockpile. They stockpile stuff, and they're hoarders, and they do that. So, one of the things that I tried to do when I was a principal in Montgomery County is tried to You know, we'll get you what you want, but please don't hoard.
When we closed
So-
down, when we had to go through and we were closing down some schools, we ran the first 2 years off of custodial supplies that we had in those buildings.
Well, that's experience too,
Yeah.
because you know what you get one year, you
Yeah,
may not see for
exactly.
10.
That's right. That's right.
But I do,
If
you
they'll
know,
rotate.
think that there needs to be a lot of transparency in that directors need to know exactly what they have so they can speak to principals and teachers can speak to principals. And if there's a project out there, let it not be money that gets in our way right now.
I will tell you an area of concern that I have right now is, and looking at a couple of ways to address it. And I talked to you and mentioned about the possibility of doing what I coined the phrase Phoenix Light, doing an elementary side of at the Phoenix Academy. We're just being bombarded right now with needs, very high needs at the elementary levels, where we have schools that are really struggling with the amount of staff that they have. We have kindergarten classrooms where there may be 4 and 5, 6 or more very need-based kids with only a teacher and 1 aide. We're struggling to meet all those needs. So that's a personnel thing. Now, some of these that are problems could be addressed if we had the other teacher, counselor, and an assistant maybe at Phoenix where we could pull some of these kids out, but we're only talking probably one teacher at this age, you're only talking probably 5 or 6 kids. So, but that's at least one from every one of the elementaries, that would help, you know, that they can go for a short term. So that's something that we'll be looking at. We were meeting today and we're just really struggling right now, getting what I think is enough help in the classrooms for teachers right now.
So does the Department of Juvenile Justice fund for Phoenix for elementary?
Not for the elementary side that I'm aware of. I'm still working it, but I don't think there would be at the elementary. They'd have to be court appointed. Now, and what we're doing is we have hearings, disciplinary hearings here. We're always going back and through the courts and trying to get students assigned by the judge, because that's a difference in funding too. Then DJJ does pick it up. So every one that's been placed there, we're until we get that side full, we're continuing to put kids on that side of it as we can. It's in the same building and everything. It's just a matter of how they're labeled as far as where the funding comes from. But I don't think that DJJ this is going to be this would be a board initiative to do this.
Or if there's any type of grant out there.
I met with Mr. Kindred, and he's excited about doing it, and he's looking into some of those things about some funding sources, possible funding sources. So we have met, we have talked about it, and talked about numbers and what we would need. At least 1 teacher, 1 aide, and 1 counselor at the elementary level counseling.
Could we maybe pair up with Mountain Comp and some of the things that
Well,
they're doing
that's-
coming in? Maybe there's grants that they could get that we could
And
look at
that's,
that too, and do a program.
I will get back
about
with
it.
Mr. Kindred. He was going to look and supposed to get back with me to see if there are some funding sources that would do the elementary side. I don't know of a lot of places to do an elementary side. This is kind of
It's kind of, it's new
kind of plowing
ground.
new ground here.
Or if Safe Schools would know anything with that too.
I haven't talked to
John Akers.
John Akers about
Well, if
that.
they'd know anything, and then maybe the Kentucky Center for Instructional Discipline, PEBAS, they might have some ideas too.
Probably something that needs to be done, because there's gonna be more.
Yeah, it's
Been
every
saying that
year
for a
we're getting-
while, and it's,
And I think Mr. Holland, he mentioned that one night, what the increase has been just in the last 2 or 3 years. It's phenomenal right now. And we're just seems like we're being swallowed up by it.
Well, obviously, we're talking about a reoccurring expense, and so
Yeah.
I think it's something that, you know, we maybe can keep the conversation going throughout the year and see how this budget ends up at the end of the year and what we can.
And we'll address some of these other possible funding sources too. We'll look at.
the demand for that's not gonna go away, according to.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, yeah.
All right. Any other questions for Dr. Arthur, or discussion amongst ourselves? Did you do the bottom line?
Did I do the bottom line? When I did the contingency piece?
Payroll H. Bottom line is, we pass it, but remember, our budget has to be structurally balanced, so.
Yes,
There it is, okay.
there it is.
Okay. All right, other questions or discussion? If not, a motion is in order to approve the 2016-2017 working budget as presented.
I move that we approve the 2016-2017 working budget as presented.
Motion by Ms. Hicks.
Hold on,
Go ahead.
can I ask a question
Sure.
before we do this? In this working budget that we're getting ready to approve, and excuse me, I'm sorry, Ms. Hicks, I probably should have asked this
No, you're
earlier.
fine.
But we talked about the 2% raise and the 3% raise. Is that already,
That's-
are we voting on this right now?
That's, I don't know how you.
I would say not.
No.
I would say
no,
we have,
are
no, we
just-
have to bring the
doing the
salary
budget
schedules.
first.
We have, the salary schedules have to be
Okay,
adjusted.
so that's what I just want to make sure. We're just approving the budget and it's
That's
there,
right.
but
There's
we got to
money in
decide
the
how to
budget
do it.
for
Okay,
that.
okay, I just want to make
If we
sure.
decide to do that, if we
Okay.
table salaries, then we can adjust the money
I
back
got you.
out of salaries into contingency.
Right.
Okay.
My suggestion would be to bring that back at a regular board meeting. I don't know what's easier in terms of accounting, or if it should take effect first of the year.
I would,
For us in the payroll department, it would be easier if you give raises, we retro it back to the beginning July 1, because of how we have to report to KTRS and.
Can we do that?
CRS.
Is that
Our
legal?
attorney said at the last meeting we could not do retroactive.
If you read the news feeds that we get every day, there's
I
counties
read,
in
there
there
were
every day. and
three
I've called
this
her.
week
I've
that
said
said
emailed her every
retroactive,
Multiple
retroactive.
districts
so we're good.
retro,
I mean,
so
just as long as they're doing, it, I mean,
I'm a little confused by that, to be honest.
Yeah.
We've done it here in the past, it's been done here in the past, it's been done in counties throughout the state as we sit here tonight.
The issue's Article 1 of the Kentucky Constitution. It forbids retroactive pay for things, and also forbids
But
bonus
that's-
pay for state employees.
But I think the thing that's outside of the contracted year, if that's money that would go beyond what's contracted for this year, we're in a contract year, I think to go back beyond what's contracted for this year might be an issue.
Because the salary tables are for fiscal year, which you're just now approving the working budget for this fiscal year, which is retro to July 1. So I mean, it's kind of.
So everything else here is retro, why wouldn't salaries be retro?
Right.
yeah. I agree.
My comprehension of school accounting for the last 5 years and how Fayette County has operated, there are timelines on how things get approved, but it's all within that fiscal year. You can't go beyond that fiscal year prior or.
You couldn't approve a raise and went back to May
Right,
or June
but
of
as long
last
as
year.
you're staying within
That's-
your fiscal
yeah.
year, it's my understanding it's
Okay.
within the law.
Well, and not to add any more to your thing, but I think that needs to be on the next agenda, I think we need to get moving on
As
that.
far as
The 2% and the 3% for
So as board chair,
classified
I
and
would
certified.
request a set of salary schedules. Let's
Yeah.
include in the packet the current salary schedules and the salary schedules with the increase.
And then, I'm sorry, Ms. Hicks.
But no, the
I just
money,
had to- I just
answer to your
talked
question,
about that
Mr.
'cause-
Wilson, is the money's in there for that.
Yes, and
But
that's,
it doesn't, that's a separate agenda item.
I'm good. I'm sorry.
So are you seconding the motion?
I will, yes, ma'am.
All right, so motion is laid upon table by Ms. Hicks and seconded by Mr. Wilson. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next item of business is adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Ms. Ritchie.
Are you gonna say?
I'll say, you want to say it, Gordon?
Second by Mr. Wilson. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We're adjourned at 6:46 PM. Just remind everybody, we have disciplinary hearing next Monday, Ms. Lance.
What time's that gonna
What
be?
time?
You were all going to discuss that time.
Yes,
tonight.
what time? What, Monday was, you were